Thank you so much for joining us on Around Town with Gene Almond
and with Business Focus with Lanny Schuff.
And we are so delighted to be joined by the recently retired City Manager Steve Raper. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Gene. How are you? Great.
I'm okay. The question is, it's been what, a few weeks now? Are you hanging in there?
A week and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. How are you doing?
It's an adjustment. It really is. But I'm doing great. Thank you for asking.
Well, we were classmates at Carolina. I always have to say that because I have known you a long time,
That's right.
Very long time. But how many years have you served as city manager?
Here in Rocky Mount, I finished my 16th at the end of December.
And prior to that, you worked with city manager Bill Batchelor,
That's
right?
right. I came back about a year before he retired. And then prior to that, in the mid-1970s, I worked here about 5 years.
And you're from Tennessee, is that right?
Well, I was born in Durham, and both my parents are North Carolinians, but I grew up in Indiana, Kentucky, and Tennessee.
And what led you, and I'm sure, at this stage you can't go back and change anything, but I hope you were glad that you pursued a career in public administration. But what was the attraction there for you, Steve?
I think serving the public, Gene, was the main thrust for me. I was always interested in government and law, and after 4 years in the Navy, I decided I wanted to work for the government in public service of some nature, and ended up studying municipal government and really liked it.
Did you get all your degrees at Carolina?
I did, yes.
Go Heels.
Well, just as a matter of curiosity, what were you doing in the Navy?
I served 4 years. I was a line officer, served 2 years in Vietnam and the Orient, and then 2 years in the Mediterranean. On board 2 ships.
It was our class where people were trying to get into OCS and because Vietnam War was really in full gear back then.
Or graduate school, one of the two.
Yeah.
Steve, in your years, and we have a mutual friend, Richard Stevens, who was Wake County manager, and I've enjoyed his conversation about that. You really have to shift gears because you have different city council members. You are elected by the city council. Appointed. Oh, okay. And that's right, because Charles Penny was just appointed. But there have been a lot of changes throughout that time, and so that's been part of your job, is having to kind of meet the demands and work with the elected bodies, right?
That's right. In any community, the elected leadership changes over time, and certainly the group that I came in with in '94, '95 is much different than the current group in a number of ways, in orientation, priorities, and interests.
And what are some of the things, I guess some of the shifts and challenges that you had, the issues being addressed when you came in are very different from the issues being addressed now, aren't they?
Well, and then the economy is completely different now as well.
I think that's probably the biggest way, or the most important aspect of change that I've seen in Rocky Mount in my 15 or 16 years is a change from the types of industry. We're predominantly textile oriented, probably in '94, '95, there were a dozen and a half textile industries.
Right.
And I don't think there's one left.
And
not today.
And you look at the number of banks that were here
Absolutely.
when you first came in.
Right.
And
so all that changed.
And therefore, what would you say are the broad-based supports? It's more small business oriented in Rocky Mount now?
Service interests, we still have some large manufacturers, thank goodness. And they continue to do well, and hopefully will continue to prosper. And of course, the Carolinas Gateway Partnership has been very active in recruiting new industry, and Alan Matthews at the Chamber of Commerce and Small Business. That's been a major emphasis for the city over the last several years.
Steve, I think all of us have watched the discussion over electric cities and the fact that our rates are higher than maybe Duke and Progress Energy, but reflect on that. And there was a big interest in deregulation a few years ago, and that was not effective. But through the years, you've told me that we probably, and I hope I'm not quoting you incorrectly, would have had to raise taxes if we hadn't been able to have some stability with the electric cities. Would you kind of comment on that too, please?
Well, the transition from a wholesale customer of Carolina Power and Light back in the late 1970s to becoming a co-owner in some power plants took place, I think, 1980. and I wasn't here then, so I don't know all the details involved with that. But the main concern back then was not only cost and rates and going up every year, but also the availability and the stability of having a firm power supply was a major concern.
And had we not done that, then we would not necessarily have had the availability and stability?
That's right. Going back that many years, you have to kind of recall that there was a great amount of energy concern throughout the country about electricity and gas and other energy sources, and it was extremely important back then to have a firm supply of power for this community. After all, we'd been in the power business since 1901.
Well, and as I look around a lot of the things happening in Rocky Mount right now, we're going to want to talk, well, let's talk about things you're most proud of, and then we will, in the second half, talk about the future and preparations in case we, heaven forbid, have another flood. But what are some of the things as you reflect back on it? And don't talk about the flood on this one. We'll get to the flood in just a minute. But what are some things that are going on even now that you started during your tenure?
Well, I think there are a number of things that have happened over the last 15 or 20 years, before and after me, that are extremely important. In terms of services, I think about the first responder program that our fire department has started, where we're able to respond to medical emergencies in advance, generally, of the county ambulance service, and try to save people. And there have been a number of incidents of heart attacks and other major concerns where we've been able to save people's lives by being there a little bit more quickly. After all, we have 7 fire stations, and that's where they operate out. So that's been a great service. I think also about our Senior Citizen Center. What a wonderful place that is for all of our elderly folks, or say elderly, I'm one of them.
That's right, yeah, all those retirees.
To get involved with, participate, swim, get exercise, and enjoy the company of others. That's been a tremendous, tremendous benefit. Another major accomplishment, I think, has been the new library. What a great facility that is, and how many people use that day in and day out, and it's a wonderful facility.
And that's added benefit. I mean, besides just the library, they've got programs there for children in the summertime. They've got the SCORE to help program to help people in business.
That's
so
right,
it's much more than a library.
That is, in the local history room and librarian Tracy Thompson have been really amassing a wonderful collection of our local history, both in Rocky Mount, Ashland, and Edgecombe County.
And even though it came from the flood, mention the Imperial Center and the Children's Museum.
Well, again, wonderful facilities. We had just entered in a contract to expand the museum in its old location in Sunset Park when the flood came, and of course it was flooded. The Art Center was flooded. So we did relocate. The council made the decision to relocate downtown and convert a great old historic facility into a tremendous asset for Rocky Mount.
And that really has been just a tremendous asset. Let me go back to the utilities. Eventually, if oil prices go up, will we not be grateful for the fact that we're tied into the nuclear facilities?
Well, I think any type of supplier needs a variety of sources. So the power agency has coal assets, coal plants, as well as nuclear. Nuclear has a lot of advantages and some risks, so it's good to be diversified.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at your predecessor, Charles Penny, that we did have a broad search, as I understand, for successor.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Appreciate that.
Charles is not that old.
But anyway, we're very fortunate to have somebody who did not have a learning curve, who is well schooled, has familiarity with our city, with our council members, to jump right in and take at the helm, right?
Well, the City Council did follow a recruitment and selection process and ended up selecting Charles, which I'm very proud of that fact. And I think Charles and the staff, it's a good, stable staff, will do great in the future.
Now, how was it? Charles came to Rocky Mount?
Yeah, we
while you were city
hired
manager?
Charles soon after I came in '94, and actually he was planning director for about 9 months before I promoted him to assistant city manager.
Ah, okay.
He was assistant manager in Asheville before he came here.
And Peter Varney will continue as an assistant manager. Is he getting ready to retire also?
Oh, you'll have to ask Peter. I don't know, but I think his immediate plans are to stay there.
And not that he's old enough to retire. I didn't mean to imply that. Oh, well,
Actually, he and I are the same age, so and you.
and me, but not you.
That's right, unfortunately.
We've got a couple minutes and then we're going to take a break. But the flood was clearly a defining moment, or just a catastrophic moment in your tenure as the city manager. Tell us where you were when you first found out, and kind of the initial responses you were seeing and implementing.
Well, it brings back a lot of bad memories and some positive memories as well. But we had prepared, the city had prepared for a hurricane. We've had several before that. So we believed that we would be experiencing something similar, and of course it wasn't. But Peter, Charles, and I always take turns in the command center, one of us being there or all of us. But at that time, Charles was there. I had gone home to get a few hours sleep, and Charles called about 2 o'clock and said, "If you're coming in, you better come on now." So I drove in to the command center, the emergency operations center.
In City Hall, or where is it?
City Hall, that's right. It's in the police department, and we'd had everything set up. We were prepared, and of course, no one was really expecting the amount of water and the ferocity of the flood that we experienced at that time.
And I think all of us, it's kind of like, where were you when
Exactly.
JFK was shot, and where were you when the flood hit? So
It's really the seminal moment in recent history in Rocky Mount.
well, let's take a break right now. When we come back, we'll follow up on that and also talk about your interest in history of Rocky Mount.
Great. Look forward to it.
Stay with us.
Be right back.
A healthy career starts here.
Edgecombe Community College offers outstanding healthcare programs in more than 12 medical fields. These programs are highly regarded by healthcare professionals and competitive with similar programs at four-year schools.
In the clinical setting, they act as our coaches and mentors.
Edgecombe Community College.
I'm ready.
Go online to edgecombe.edu today. The world out there starts here.
There is a taste of Italy right here in Rocky Mount. Join us at the new Serafina's Ristorante, located at 501 Old Mill Road in the original Atchinson's building. Reaching way back to great-grandmother's recipes, Teresa and Scott want to present to you affordable fine dining at its best. Fresh seafood, chicken, steak, veal, and pastas. Join us for an evening of good traditional Italian dishes, specialty dishes, great wines, music, and plenty of fun and laughter. With a staff that is attentive to detail, you and your family will love Serafina's Ristorante. Reservations accepted, not required. Call 252-442-7800.
The opportunity for a new or better career could be closer than you think, and it all starts with enrolling at Edgecombe Community College.
I did.
I did.
I did.
I did.
Ask a graduating ECC student about their future. They'll tell you.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Call Edgecombe Community College. Go online to edgecombe.edu today. The world out there starts here.
Welcome back, and this is Lanny Schuff with Business Focus.
And Gene Almond around town, and Steve Raper, recently retired city manager of Rocky Mount, and loving every minute of it, right?
Sounds strange, but that's right.
Now, Steve is going to become known as a Delphi for the Oracle for Rocky Mount. For everybody who wants to know about what's the history of Rocky Mount. He has been doing an awful lot of research, into what has been the history of Rocky Mount. I know that one of the things that he has done is been to try to go ahead and get pictures of all the past mayors, so that we have now an accurate accumulation of all that.
The first effort was to identify all of our mayors. Unfortunately, we have the first 13 years of city history. All the city council, or at that time board of commissioners meeting minutes are gone. They either didn't exist, don't exist, were lost, or whatever. But we've had to try to identify through other sources who actually were our mayors from 1867, 1868 through about 1880. And we're down to about 4.5 years where we've identified all the sitting mayors and most of the city council members.
Was Mayor Turnage the longest serving mayor?
He was,
by far.
34 years, yes.
I think most of the mayors served only one term, and the most 2 terms, didn't they?
They began at 1-year terms and then eventually went to 2-year terms, and then finally in the 1970s, 4-year terms.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred, I believe, was elected first for a 2-year term, and then it changed over to 4-year terms.
Mm-hmm.
And the thought that he is now the chairman of the chamber, the soon to be outgoing chairman of the chamber, is amazing that he continues to serve the public.
Absolutely. A very, very unique person, and one I enjoyed working with a great deal.
The fact that you also serve on the Killebrew, right, the restoration and categorizing. Tell us about that, because Charlie Killebrew, of course, was a photographer for the newspaper and freelance for a long time. And
50 years, yeah.
That collection's amazing.
It is, and the library has taken responsibility for ownership and trying to catalog and identify all those wonderful pictures that Charlie made over the years, and just lots of history. And it's an ongoing program that'll be ongoing for years, I'm afraid. It's just going to take a lot of time.
Is the majority of your interest in history and collection government related, or are you also doing economically related?
I think it all, certainly back in those times, are related. Early leaders of this community were by and large entrepreneurs, store owners, or people who began businesses and development. There were a few professionals. There was an attorney. Our first mayor was an attorney. But we also, either our third or fourth mayor was a physician, an MD, way back when. So, and he's been the only one, Mr. Tillery.
In looking at old history books, not only across state, but especially Eastern North Carolina, they were always men, and they were always dressed in suits, and they were always ones who were willing to step out. Was Miss Gay the first female city council member?
No, Linda Holmes in 1972 was our first female that I'm aware of city council member. And then Ms. Gay was the first African-American female city council member.
And still a significant portion of government elected positions, are you saying, just in looking across the country, are still more male-dominated, or are you seeing a real trend to move in the other direction?
I think we've really seen a major change. I think our Supreme Court here in North Carolina is now a majority female. So, if I'm not incorrect, but certainly there have been, over our history here in Rocky Mount, predominance of white male. That changed in 1899 to be precise. First African American was elected, and we had 3 African Americans between 1899 and about 1902. But then it was almost 70 years before Reverend Dudley was elected in 1972 as city council member.
Talk about go ahead, Lanny.
Well, I just wanted to follow up a little bit on the on the history of Rocky Mount and your involvement in that, because there is so much of the history that is just not known yet. Are you developing new information that you're going to eventually, hopefully, let everybody know?
Well, yes, we've done some writing for the local genealogical society, the Tar River Group, and we'll probably be doing some more. I suspect we'll be doing some more.
Okay.
Is your wife helping you? You said we, or is that the?
I've had a friend of mine, retired director of water resources, Paul Blunt's been doing a lot of research while I was still manager. Wasn't able to spend all the time that I needed to do that. And Paul did a lot of the research in Raleigh, helping us to try to track down some loose ends.
The Douglas Block is really taking shape now. Talk about that.
What an exciting project, and I hope everyone gets a chance to go over and look at it. It's nearing completion. I think the theater is going to be a wonderful addition to this community. The apartments are outstanding, beautiful wood floors, and then the stores on the ground floor, I think, are and offices will be filled up pretty quickly.
Well, well, it certainly has taken the imagination and the interest of the whole entire town about what's going on that.
It is a historic block. It really was. The first train station really was just across the street on the near the railroad track from the Douglas Block. Back when the city was originally founded, 1860s, there was a hotel where the Douglas Block was. Mm-hmm. Then an old firehouse was there, and then it eventually began to develop as the first real African American concentration of businesses and professional offices.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's go back to the flood for just a little bit.
We're moving back and forth.
Yes, well, exactly. Tell us just a little bit more about what was it like being there in the command center. I know that you said that it was frustrating and that there were, but what, from a personal standpoint?
Well, there was obviously a lot going on. We were involved early on with life-saving efforts. The fire department, the police department were primarily responding to calls, emergency calls, people stranded, people caught in their homes, people caught outside in trees trying to get above the water, folks on the bridges, again, staying out of water. We had a number of folks trapped in automobiles and trucks, trying to get those folks saved. So that was really the major area of emphasis initially, first several hours. We lost a water plant. As you know, the Sunset Water Plant was flooded, and then trying to react to that, our main first power supply substation next to the Sunset Water Plant was taken out of commission, as were several others. So trying to restore public services was another major concern, as well as the safety of all of our citizens. And then the loss of homes, and how do we take care of people, where can we get them shelter, what kind of resources can we get in to provide food and the basic necessities. And then just overall, after several hours, trying to assess the extent of damage.
Did you get any sleep during that time? How did y'all function during that time? Did y'all just live there in the control
We
center?
lived there for, it was about 3 days before I was able to get out any amount of time. In my own personal situation, we had a neighbor's tree fall through our house, so I tried to get the leak stopped and then get back to work. And so many of our employees, it's incredible, Lanny, how many employees' homes were flooded, but yet they stayed on the job, making sure their family was okay, but stayed on the job helping to respond to other citizens.
As a result of the flood, of course, many things have changed in the city, but are there any ongoing projects still from the flood money that came in?
No, majority, if not all of that, has been spent. We've pretty well closed out all the accounts on that, all the grants. But as a result, physically, you see lots of open green spaces now.
Yeah.
That will be permanently barred from any type of development. And that's good in a lot of ways, but it was a loss of tax area, property, the homes that were destroyed, they were bought, and that was good for the owners. But we ended up with a lot of property that we, being the city, that has to be maintained perpetually. But again, it's green space. It can be used for some good things, but it's hopefully being able to keep folks out of harm's way for the future.
Steve, I want you to talk about, we've got a couple minutes, and I think it's always good to end with the fond memories. What were some of the best of people that the flood brought out in people that you saw?
As we were discussing a few minutes ago, it's really the worst of times, but the best of times. I've never seen a community come together the way Rocky Mount folks did after the flood. People helping people in imaginable ways, unimaginable ways. Not only helping them get out of dangerous areas, but providing shelter and food and volunteering and helping people clean up and try to address their homes that they'd lived in for years and saved for, trying to help them get recovered. It was really a total community commitment to building back and hopefully better than what we were.
And I think a lot of those feelings have continued. I mean, people learned things about their neighbors and friends that they hadn't had to need to know before.
It brought all of us from every area of Rocky Mount together, and it was, I kind of look at it as an equal opportunity flood. You had the wealthiest part of our community and perhaps the neediest part of our communities were all equally affected, and people came together, worked together, but more importantly got to know each other, know that we're all human and all part of this community.
I think that that's one of the things that we need to, as we go through the various problems that we're trying to go ahead and solve now with the annexation or the new industry coming in, things of that sort, is to go back to that time of, we're still all part of the same community and we've got to work together.
Certainly we all have deep down the same basic interest, I think.
And we're mighty glad that you and Winnie have chosen to stay here. That reflects well on you and us, that you have choices now, but you're going to stay with us.
Well, it's home. I've lived here longer than any place in my whole life, so Rocky Mount's home is a great community, and we look forward to our future here.
Steve, thank you so much for your service. You've done a wonderful job, and we truly appreciate it.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Uh-huh.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And
yes, sir.
thank you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
See you a little bit later. Take care.